And what's up, everybody? It's Terminator Juice back with another Juice Opinions, and I think this makes 3 weeks in a row where I've gotten the Juice Opinions out. There was times where there was a month plus in between, so I'm gonna try to keep this pace going. There seems to be stuff to talk about as we're getting closer to E3 and more games are coming out and stuff. So today is April 20th, so 420, light them if you got them. So we got Nintendo Labo came out today, and God of War on PS4 both hit, which is weird because I don't know for sure, but this feels like the first PS4 game to release on a Friday. Like a major either third party or first party game. I wonder if they figured out that works better. Like Nintendo's been doing Fridays since before the Wii started, I believe. It was a year before. So interesting. I can't think of another game that came out on a Friday for the PlayStation 4. So, and this seems to be, which will end up being, one of the defining games for the system at this point. It looks to be that way 4.5 years in. So I just want to, be real with you guys. My excitement level for Nintendo Labo is literally, it's zero. I have absolutely zero interest in Labo. Personally, even watching, like, I see everyone, Game Explain and Nintendo Live, Nintendo World Report, they're all doing live, putting it together. Just like watching other people play games, I'm not gonna watch somebody put Labo together. Like if I was interested in Labo, I'm not gonna watch somebody else put it together. But I think the last big event they had was in March, or I think it was early March or late February. And you really got to see like the IR camera when you're in the RC car, and it could actually see, and really found out, wow, this is way more, involved than I thought as far as the technology wise. The instructions look really well done. I'd be shocked if Lego or IKEA, like Nintendo Voice Chat was talking about, didn't do something similar when it comes to putting stuff together. Just download it either to your Switch or your phone. Obviously, smartphones and tablets would be the first choice. And here you get this 3-dimensional for putting stuff together. It'd be great. But ever since we've seen all that, I was impressed by that, and I was like, yeah, that's cool. And then you found out about the garage, a little bit of programming you can do and stuff. But that was like the pinnacle for it. Ever since then, it's just my hype level, my excitement has just been waning. And now at the launch of it, I mean, I had forgotten it was coming out until I turned on my YouTube at lunch today and was like, oh wow, there's a bunch of Labo videos. So, if I was younger, if I had kids, I think this would be a definite, day one. I think it looks cool. The pricing seems to be fine. Watching, what you get in the kit and how involved like I said, the instructions are really well done and stuff. I have no problem there. But it just seems like it's fun to put together. The software seems a little shallow. And by next weekend, most people probably aren't going to be playing it anymore. That's how I feel about it. So, just like a Lego set, it's really fun. It's awesome going through those instructions and putting that together. But once you're done, then you just look at it. Now it's a collectible. If you're, unless you're a kid, then you play with it. But Labo, I just feel like the software, from what I've seen, it's just not compelling enough for someone like me to go out and get. I think it'd be cool to put it together. If someone bought it and brought it over, yeah, I'd definitely put one together. I think it would be cool. I like following instructions. It's something about just starting from the beginning and with Legos, you like separate them by colors and all the pieces, getting them organized and then putting it together. It's a really fun experience, but it's a one-time experience for the most part. So I think Labo is going to suffer that. So, but for anyone, that has kids and stuff, hopefully if you picked it up, you're enjoying it, and, feel free to comment on if it impressed you, if it didn't, if you think it's, a one-time deal like I'm saying, or does it have some lasting appeal. So then, God of War, I have been pretty actively, talking about reviews and stuff on Twitter. My last Juice Opinions, I was talking about how I was talking, when reviews of a video game, or it's just so focused on story, cinematics and stuff, it's not a game for me. I should have said it's usually not a game for me. There has been examples where I actually enjoyed the game, and I plan on picking up God of War. Not a full price game for me. I just, like I said, I know when it's that much emphasis on the story and the characters and dialogue and stuff, that it's not going to be, a game where I'm going to be talking about it come January next year as, my favorite game of the year. Maybe it will be, but usually for the most part, like the Uncharted's, Last of Us was probably the best one for me out of those types of games, but I didn't like it nearly, it wasn't the 10 out of 10s a lot of people did, even though I did enjoy the story and I did enjoy the characters. Still, Super Mario 3D World was still my game of the year because, it was just an amazing gameplay experience, and one of my favorite 3D Mario games. But my interest in God of War, it's probably at like a 60%, or 6 out of 10. If I knew Sony if they weren't known for dropping their prices of their games within 2 months to $40, and if I was like, if I knew this game was going to be 60 for the next year, I'd just buy it today. I would just buy it and start playing it. Like, it's something I'm interested in. I know I'm going to get it, and it's pretty light for Switch games right now, and this would be a perfect time. But I just know, just like with Horizon Zero Dawn, by E3 time, it was a $40 game. And it's like, I know to some people, they just can't understand this, but when you know the value of something's going to drop, or when I do, I should say, I can't pay full price for it. Now, when I bought my TV from crutchfield.com, which is a great website and great company, if you ever call them, I'd highly recommend buying electronics from them. They're a really great company, but Crutchfield had a price match guarantee, and it was, I think, 90 days. And about a month after I bought my TV, they dropped the price $300. So I called them up. They applied it to I did a 2-year no interest, credit card through Sony Financial, and they just applied the credit to my next bill I got. It was minus $300. So that was nice. If I knew that I was price guaranteed on gaming, I would do that. But I just like to know. I even bought my Toyota Tacoma because it has the highest resale value of any vehicle in America. The prices do not drop on these things. And that just tells me, like, if I ever had to sell it, or if I just felt like, this isn't for me, I know I'm going to get top dollar for it. There's just something about that just, Nintendo games, I don't have to worry about buying the next, let's say, Metroid Prime 4, because I don't have to worry about that price being slashed and cut down. And I'm like, you could say, I see the argument, like, well, you paid 60, you got your enjoyment out of it. What does it matter? I don't know how to explain it any better than just to tell you that, knowing that there's no benefit to waiting, because this game is going to be full price. You might see a $2, $3, $4 sale one day on Amazon or something. But if I'm going to put $60 down for something, I want to know that it's not going to drop to $40 in a couple months, because then I'm just like, I can wait 2 months, especially for a game like God of War. I know I can freaking wait to play it. So, and I know Sony's going to drop the price anyway, or Best Buy's going to have a sale. It doesn't matter, or it's not that big of a deal to me to wait, knowing the price is going to drop. I'm trying to think. Gravity Rush 2, I bought full price, and I got it at launch with the 10% or 20% off. So it was $52 or whatever. I really wanted to play that game. I wanted to support a Sony exclusive that was colorful and had gyro controls and stuff. So I had no problem buying that game at full price, knowing very well that it was going to be under $40 by time, you know, halfway through the year. I'd be curious to see what they sell that for right now. I'm guessing pretty cheap. But that was an instance where I know the price is going to drop, but I wanted to support that game. I wanted to support that type of game on a Sony system. And it was a really good game. It was my number 5 game of 2017. And I had no problem paying, you know, the full price minus, you know, Best Buy discount. But still, there was an example where I didn't want to wait, and I had no problem. Whereas God of War, it's just like Horizon. I know it's going to be a good game or a decent game or maybe a really good game, but to me, it's worth the wait to save $20, especially, like I said, I just bought a Toyota Tacoma truck, and I'm not just throwing money around anymore like I used to. So, but yeah, so let's get into what's most important to me in a video game. Now, you guys, your list might be completely different than mine, might be the same. There might be some differences. And I just got to say, respect to people's opinions, and, you know, everyone's different. So like Terrell was saying on Twitter today, you know, people just need to accept that some arguments just got to end with agreeing to disagree. You can't just, you're not going to convince other people to feel the same way as you, just like they're trying to, if they're trying to convince you, you're trying to convince them. Nothing's going to get achieved unless somebody's truly ignorant to something. Like they're just absolutely never been exposed to, let's say, just for example, because I know Retro Death was in here and I just brought up Terrell. Let's say anime. Let's say somebody was just like, I can't watch no damn cartoons. I'm an adult, you know. That's not an argument that's like your opinion. Like that's just ignorance there. Like if you haven't tried it and you're just speculating, blah blah blah, that's where someone could change your mind. They could say, all right, well, do you like mature stories of science fiction? Do you like, you know, mechs or robots? You know, just to kind of you know, generalize and use the stereotypes. And let's say told them the storyline of Ghost in the Shell, the anime, the movie, not necessarily the series. And they're like, well, I love the Matrix. That sounds really cool. You know, like you could change somebody's mind if they're ignorant to something, if they're like trying to talk about something they don't know anything about. So that's an example, I guess, where with a debate or something, you could actually convince somebody of something. But as far as like, if you've been playing gaming or been a gamer for a while, you've been playing video games, you know what you like. And you know what you like if you've tried it. Like that's the only thing I'll say. If you haven't tried something, then you really shouldn't comment on it. You really shouldn't say you don't like it or you don't think you'll like it. Like, yeah. What's up, Trell? Yeah, I was talking anime. If you haven't tried something, like I know there's people like, oh, I can't play Xenoblade. That just looks weird. That gameplay looks weird. I don't understand what's going on. Well, you haven't tried it, so you can say you don't think you'll like it, but you don't really know. I mean, that's one of the most common game series ever since Xenoblade Chronicles X, or I see people saying they don't think they'd like it or they don't like RPGs. And I'm not a huge RPG fan. I'm not big on turn-based. I've played turn-based RPGs. What was that Ubisoft game, Child of Light? I beat that game. I played it all the way through. Not my favorite style of combat or battle system, battle mechanics, whatever you call them. But I played through the game and I played through other turn-based games. So I know that while some can be good, they usually just don't, you know, it's just not for me for gaming. So, all right. I was going to just, you know, gameplay, number one, gameplay. But gameplay is like one of those phrases that gets thrown around a lot and then doesn't really, if you ask somebody like, describe the definition of gameplay, you know, it's like, to me, it's not as simple as just saying gameplay. So what I'm going to talk about for my, you know, basically in order from number, you know, the first thing that's important to me is technically in gameplay, but I want to kind of break it down a little bit more. So the game mechanics of the game, that's number one for me. So this, and maybe I'm wrong, this is kind of how I feel about it. The mechanics of a game are what you're doing. So if it's a 3D platformer, the jumping, the move set of the character, if there's climbing, if it's a shooter, the shooting mechanics, the way you maneuver through the world, if it's a puzzle game, it's like the way you solve puzzles, the style of puzzles. So like the battle system in an RPG, like the game mechanics, get those right, and a lot of other things fall into place. So that's number one. Give some examples of like Rise of the Tomb Raider. You guys know, if you've been watching me for a while, I bring this game up all the time. The game mechanics of Rise of the Tomb Raider versus, let's say, Uncharted 4, which some people think it's not even close between Uncharted 4 and Rise of the Tomb Raider. They think it's Uncharted that's so much better. I think it's the other way around. Rise of the Tomb Raider is not even close to me. Uncharted doesn't even come close. So some of the game mechanics are, obviously you have the bow and you have guns and stuff. So running around the environment, the jumping, the her ability to climb, shooting the bow, upgrading your guns and stuff. Like those are the mechanics of the game. Progressing, you progress by just, kind of going to the spot on the map and, doing what's the mission, the story mission, some side quests. But the Lara Croft's ability to just jump and aim and kind of just, if there's a branch and you jump, she just swings across it with like effortlessly. And it's just like the mechanics of how Lara Croft controls and plays versus Uncharted, which Uncharted 4 was a lot better than the other Uncharted 2 that I played. But it's just like you kind of walk around and you can take cover and you shoot and then you climb when it lets you climb. And then it's like, okay, then you got the swinging part, which was new to the series, but they didn't really, use it too well. So the mechanics of Uncharted 4 to me, while better than Uncharted 2, just weren't nowhere near as good as Rise of the Tomb Raider. So to go with that, one and the same, almost like yin and yang would be the controls. Number two is how the game controls. Responsive controls, intuitive controls, and precision, depending on the type of game, are key. Like if you have good mechanics and good controls, you have a pretty good game already. So, and some people it's like, duh, obviously, but there's some people that would rather have things above this. So, controls, intuitive is just like the button placement. Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, for all its greatness, for some people, the running and jumping should be switched, and you don't have that option. You get used to it, but button layout would be kind of part of that. But for me, it's just like moving your character. One, is it responsive? You don't want input lag. You don't want any kind of, you pressing up but you're going left, which if you have, other than a defective controller, it's part of the game. When you hit the jump button, you want it to be immediate, and then go with the mechanics. If the game has a double jump or something that just helps you maneuver through the environment, the mechanics and the controls work tandem. So I mean, you could have interesting mechanics, but if the controls aren't on point, then it's for nothing. You have to suffer through. If you can have great controls and very limited mechanics, and then it's probably not as engaging of a game. But to me, like gyro aiming, and they added that to Doom, and I'm going back through and playing every level and finding all the collectibles, and I'm finally getting like my brain and my hands, are just in sync with the motion aiming now, and that just vastly improves the experience of playing Doom, especially compared to playing on PC, where I don't use keyboard and mouse. I use Xbox One controller. And this is a great controller in its own right, and the analog sticks are really nice, and the shoulder buttons are nice. But going back to not having gyro, you know, that's a big drop off for me. So controls, mechanics, like you could swap them, I guess, 1 and 2, no matter what, for me. And the next thing is, now that you have great mechanics and great controls, you know, what's left? Well, what am I doing with those mechanics and controls? And so I'm going to put level design as number 3 on my list. And you could also put world design. It depends on the type of game. If it's a linear style 2D platformer, then level design is you're going from left to right or right to left, whatever. In some games it switches. You know, what am I doing? Am I just running in a straight line and then I beat the level? Or you're putting things in place that are causing me to react, have to think, and giving me whether it's excitement or tension, you know, based on the challenge. A great design level. Super Mario Maker proved that a great design level is hard to achieve. So, you know, it's not an easy thing. If it was an easy thing, then all games would have it. So you have a great sticking with 2D platform. You have an interesting level, and you have a gap you have to jump, and then you put an enemy. You don't want it to be just like cheap, where they know you're going to jump and you're going to hit this enemy every time. You know, like that's just unplayable at that point. So then you got the placement of stuff, creating shortcuts, creating for speedrunners, and you know, like if you play Tropical Freeze on the Wii U and you go to the time trial section, you can download and watch people's records and see what they do. And it's like going back to game mechanics and controls. How did they know that someone was going to be able to jump off 3 enemies and then clear this whole gap and skip this whole section? They thought, you know, of like on that on Tropical Freeze, that's that level where it's green and white silhouettes, and it's one with the Samus ship in the background. If you catch it, there's a spot where this big vine comes, you know, you have to wait for this vine to unroll this, you know, like tree branch, and there's like, you know, a way to just skip all that. So level design on a 2D platformer it's tough to make it great, but when it is, you just know. It's like, you know, like I said, if you just had a straight path with you know, had to jump over a few enemies or something, and it's not very interesting. For an open world style game, then the level design is obviously different. It's more challenging, and you know, Breath of the Wild proved, or kind of, I don't know about proved, it definitely showed the industry like how to do it right, in that there's all these places you see and you want to go to. And for me, Horizon Zero Dawn, one of the weakest aspects of the game, we're giving you like interesting things in the distance to want to go to. So you're just following your mission marker and bringing up that really cool map, but you're not taking in anything on the way. You're not looking at any scenery and getting distracted, you know, by a lot of stuff. So an open world game, the level design is, you know, having interesting things to make you want to go to. And, you know, like Far Cry 3 in the Far Cry series, not my favorite game series, but one of the design choices they made in the open world, which, you know, even Zelda kind of has a similar, in some instances, where you see this enemy encampment, and now you're, you know, if you want to, if you choose to, you can go take out the guys, and then it becomes your base, you know, where you can fast travel. Putting that into the world, and now I'm, you know, I got a sniper rifle, and I really worked my ass off to get the silencer on it, and then I'm like just becoming, you know, like this elite sniper taking out these guys one at a time. And you know, that addition to that open world was part of the design of the game, and made that pretty much saving grace of that game for me. The other thing, for like, let's say it's a puzzle game, you know, like the design of the puzzles, or even in a, you know, a game like an open world game, 3D third person action game, there can still be puzzle elements. And so part of the level design or the design of the environments would be the puzzles you know, that you have to solve. And that's another thing. So if you have interesting puzzles that make you actually think, not like, I'm trying to think of, you know, Uncharted 2 and 4 had a few, um, you know, puzzles here and there. It felt like most of them were just turn things until it's going to click and you're going to know. And it's just, it's so obvious. I'm trying to think of like, it's not a Sony game. It might even been a Nintendo game where solving the puzzles was just such an easy thing that you just like, if you just rotate this thing enough, you know, it's going to end up in the right position. That's bad design there. So level design, world design, number 3 on my list of important things to a video game. And number 4 is art style and art direction. I'm going to put the two together. So you could, you know, that's not graphics. That's not, you know, graphics engines and stuff. It's the actual art style. It's what you're looking at. Is it interesting? Does it fit, you know, the type of game it is? Is it some people want like a wondrous experience or like a fantasy setting, you know, they want to feel like they're in a fantastical world, you know, where anything's possible. Like, you know, the movie Avatar, people got lost in that world and, you know, kind of wished they were there, you know? So in a game, the art style is kind of like, you know, is it cell shaded or is it, you know, hyper realistic or is it realistic? I'm leaning more towards the non-realistic for me when I say it's important. The art direction though is probably the most important part of it. And that's, look at Metroid Prime, for example, coming up with just really cool, interesting looking environments that make you feel like in that game, like, man, I'm in an alien world. Like there's no doubt about it. This is not Earth. This is nothing like Earth. And, you know, that guy or girl, I can't remember, went on to work with, who's the people that do the Halo series now, 343. So you saw Halo 4, it looked a lot like Metroid Prime, you know, in its design. So the art direction to me, like Xenoblade Chronicles X, the art direction of that game to me is way above Xenoblade Chronicles 2. I don't know if they had the same person working on it or not, but you know, so you have the great mechanics, you have the great controls, you have interesting level design. Now I have this just amazing looking world that I want to be a part of. And you could say, well, what if it's a 2D platformer? Well, Tropical Freeze, for example, the art style and the art direction was to make 3D character models and have a 3D, everything be basically 3D, but have a 2D plane. And it has bright colors, you know, like you go from the jungle stage, not the jungle stage, the Sahara, you know, the Lion King stage. I forget. I wish I knew what it was called. I should probably look that up someday, with the music and everything. And, you know, there's dry, like, African safari, like grass. But then there's these bright colors. Well, then there's another world where it's like you're bouncing on jello and it's like green and pink and everything's bright and colorful and just looks really good. And it almost has a, you know, like a Pixar CGI look to it. You know, some 2D platformers like Rayman Legends are all hand drawn, looking really cool, art direction and stuff. So now if you have amazing art direction, but you don't have the first 3 things on my list, then you just have a pretty looking game. And you have a like 300, the movie, visually just really impressive. I mean, it wowed people. It was just so unique and awesome. The movie's entertaining, but over time, it hasn't aged well, but it still looks, you know, really cool. So, like, just to reiterate, like, you got to have all of these things. You can't just have one. But for me, I'm just listing them in importance for me. So after that, I put the character design, very similar to the art direction. You know, if you're playing in a world with multiple characters and stuff, or just the main character who you're controlling, you kind of want them to, you know, look cool, but not look like they're trying to look cool. Just an interesting character. appealing, whether it's, not saying like attractive appealing, but just, you don't want to play as like, have you seen State of Decay 2? Have you seen any gameplay of that game? Those characters just look really terrible. Like the design of them, the execution, it's just terrible looking. And it's like, I don't know what the budget was for that game. I don't know why they look the way they do, but I mean, if the game was awesome in every other way, I could get past it. But, if I'm going to be playing as a character for, 20, 30, 40 plus hours, I want the design of the character to be something I want, that I don't mind looking at the whole time. Xenoblade Chronicles 2, I don't love Rex's design much, but that's why it's like 5 on my list of things that's important. Pyra design, amazing. Nia, amazing. Zeke, love Zeke's design. Pandoria, all great designs. Those are good examples of great, great design characters. The Lara Croft from the Tomb Raider reboot, the design was like a perfect blend for me of like that game's going for a little bit more realism, but still looks like a video game. She doesn't look like, if you like they were trying to make her feel like a real person. Like, I think maybe next generation that will start happening more, but a great design character, even though it's in a realistic setting. Samus, I mean, Samus has seen changes here and there, but the core design of Samus is, I mean, it's a memorable character. It's something you never really seen before, but it stands out. And if you saw a silhouette of Samus, you're going to know it. So that's the impact of. Yeah, I might have forgot one too. Hold on a second. Oh yeah, I did skip one. Sorry. But so character design wasn't my 5. It was actually my number 6. I had drawn some lines. But you guys get, if a character's designed well, they become memorable. And now, while it's not that, super important to me, but, like that's Hall of Fame character design right there. Like, it's just so well, her suit and everything's just so well designed that, as long as humans are around, and I think history will show that a design like that will stand the test of time. So let's get back to my real number 5, and it sucks that I missed it, because like I said, I scribbled some lines and I didn't want to miss it. But music, I'm going to put that, it could be interchangeable with art direction and the art style. It might actually be, now I'm thinking about it, might actually be just ahead of it. But the music in a game is another thing like character design that sticks with you. We all know that the best way to remember stuff is to, like, if you're in school, I don't know if they still teach this stuff, but to like put it to a song, like the alphabet. The easiest way to remember the alphabet is to kind of sing the alphabet. So our brains have, for whatever reason, music sticks with us more than just, someone telling us something, someone telling us words. You'll hum it. You might not remember every word of a song or something, but if it just sticks with you for whatever reason more than anything else. So music to me, especially if it's perfectly like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like not synced, but I guess for lack of a better word, I can't think of, like, synced up with the art direction. Let's say the music and the art direction are in harmony. That's what I was trying to say. That can add so much to the game. And I'm not talking about just like obvious, like, hey, this is a song, this is music, but just minor notes here and there, like what way Breath of the Wild does it. It can be quieter segments, but like I can hear Super Metroid music right now, the Metroid Prime intro music, all the Marios, Super Mario World. I can hear the World 1 main theme right now. It's in my head. It'll always be in my head until my brain start going. That stuff sticks with me. Legend of Zelda, the main theme. I mean, it gives me chills hearing it. It's so ingrained in my memory and who I am. So, I'm gonna put music ahead of art direction. I wish I had thought about this list a little bit more, but I'm definitely gonna put it at number 4 because I mean it is something that can propel the game to a new level, to new heights. Like Axiom Verge, there's a couple later sections where the music gets so good, like I just couldn't believe how good the music was, and I love that game. It's a very Metroid style game, and I'm enjoying the game. But that music kicked in, and I'm like, "Are you kidding me? Like this game has this good of music too." Like it just took the game to another level for me. And some people would say that's story for them, but for me, music. Getting back to Horizon, I couldn't tell you. You could play a bunch of orchestra to me, and I couldn't tell you if it came from Horizon. There was nothing memorable about it. I'm not saying it's bad, but there's nothing memorable going on. And it's just like movies. Um, you know, Hans Zimmer doing Superman, Man of Steel, and I think he was there with for Batman versus Superman. His music just like elevated those movies for me. I couldn't tell you a theme from a Marvel movie other than the Fox and Sony ones, like Spider-Man. I can hear the Spider-Man theme. That's Danny Elfman, who I think he's not that great anymore, but the X-Men theme sticks with me. So music, and you could put sound in there as well. Like he did a video a while back about Banjo-Kazooie versus Donkey Kong, or not Donkey Kong, Super Mario 64. And he's playing a section in Banjo-Kazooie where the sound effects were so annoying that I almost want to turn the video off. And I remember thinking that when I'd play those rare games, something about the sound design is just straight up annoying to me, and I couldn't play it. So after music, the sound effects and the sound, they don't have to be the most, high fidelity audio I've ever heard. Just don't be annoying, just complement the game. And, like if you're navigating a menu, you can have a subtle tune. Splatoon has that's like straight up soundtrack stuff there. I mean, those songs could be put on a CD and you can listen to it like a normal, like a normal album, but the music fits really, really good. Yeah. So I guess the last thing, and I didn't actually know if I could put this as a category, but it's definitely important, and I just couldn't think, like, is this more important than character design? Is this more important than music? But polish. A game, I think, has to be polished. Like, all these other things are great, and, without them, there's not a game. But at the end of the day, I don't want my game crashing. I don't want huge major bugs. I don't want, and this isn't really nothing to do with visuals, but if a game like stutters or drops to the point where I can't play it anymore, like that doesn't happen really, but I'm just saying extreme example. So I don't know if this is something like I could actually put into it and say, hey, this is the number 2 most important thing. It's really important as long as everything else is there. If a game's not polished, it can, even if, a lot of the stuff's there, if you got a buggy game, if you got instances where, like, let's say the controls just don't work. Like I'm trying to think of the game where you'd like hold up and you just keep running forward. It might even happen in Zelda. Was it Zelda? I don't remember. There was a game that came out where you'd hold up and then it'd like stay running for and you had to like do something to stop it. And whatever it was fixed. But I'm just saying, those things can really bring a game down. Rocket League, they added a visual bump, didn't make the game any more fun. It looks nicer, but along with that update came with this weird like glitchiness, and like within a week they patched it and game ran smooth again. It's like, I don't care about the visual bump. I want this game to play smooth again. Like it just was off. Something was wrong. It just kind of stuttered. It wasn't a frame rate thing. It was just like, it was weird. And it was mostly online because that game's mostly online. So, and then, I want to talk about the polish, but like I said, I didn't know if that could be something that's like it's definitely important, but I don't know if it's in the same type of category as, with the other things. But and then story, I guess, is gonna be last. If it's appropriate for a game, I mean, story can definitely help a game. That's if all things were equal, two games were equal, both had great mechanics, great controls, level design, art direction, all that, then the one with the more interesting story, I guess, it's hard because you're comparing apples to oranges. Is you could say, let's say, I love Rise of the Tomb Raider. The mechanics of it, the controls, the design, everything's solid. The story's not amazing, but what's another game that's that equal in every category? It's too hard to find two games that are that similar. But I guess hypothetically, if you had two games where I loved everything the same, but one had a really amazing story and one had an okay story or something, I guess that would definitely put it over the top. Or if if it was a story driven game, which I don't really get into those games that much, I guess it could be more important depending on the game. But like a puzzle game, it's not important. A platformer, not important. Breath of the Wild's story was good, but I still think it's below all the other things for that game in particular. And then, the thing I don't care about, which some people it's really important, is the actual graphics, like the pixels, not the pixels, the pores and the characters and the little details where it's hard to say, what's graphics and what's art direction or what's art style. Like I talk about the grass in Breath of the Wild, still impresses me today. Technically, that's the graphics, I guess, the graphics engine able to do it, but it's still to me more the art style and art direction of the game. But like just if someone's watching this, they might not understand this, but I think God of War looks like it's a good looking game, like especially the environments that are more fantasy. And I'm seeing like there's one level that reminded me of Ori and the Blind Forest a little bit. It was like this glowing tree and it was like purples and blues and stuff. It looked really cool. But I put God of War and a game like Celeste on the same level as far as those are two good looking games. Like Celeste is a beautiful looking game with pixel art, and it's above 16-bit era. It's probably like 32-bit era-esque, but in HD. Ori and the Blind Forest, to me, is one of the best looking games in the last, at least 10 years. Like it's an amazing looking game, but it's art direction. It's like the graphics are part of that, but to me, it looks better than Horizon and God of War and even Breath of the Wild for the most part. Ori and the Blind Forest, just amazing looking game. So, it doesn't really matter if it's every pore is visible and there's wrinkles in hands, or if it's just pixels on a screen that just somehow makes you feel like, oh, I can really like the animations with that character with the pixel art and the lighting, tricks they can use now with pixel art. Like to me, that's just as beautiful. And so in some cases, even more impressive. Like SteamWorld Dig 2 is a really good looking game to me. Like it's up there. Mario Kart 8, one of the best looking games. But without everything above it, it doesn't matter. So that's why in my list of importance, that's where I have it. Another thing, and that's my list. Maybe I forgot something, but I did think about it for a good half hour, and then the podcast or the start time was looming, so I kind of just, all right, let's just go with it. But so talking about story, so I tweeted today, and actually let me bring that. I can link you guys to the tweet because I was, I ain't gonna lie, I was pretty proud of myself for it. And because of it was, I don't want to say a revelation because I already knew this, but to put it into words, I was like, yeah, like that's exactly how I feel. And it was just, it's related to God of War because you see, and maybe that link don't work. So I know Twitter links don't work sometimes. Yeah, it came up. So, seeing a lot of God of War stuff, and I'm trying my best not to feed the machine, but it's reached critical mass. You got BBC, the broadcast network in Europe or whatever, or England. I don't know where it's out of. They're doing reviews of God of War, and they're talking about the cinematic experience, and games need to start. This is the new standard for gaming. So I was like, story is important in one way. And so here's the tweet. It said 13 months ago, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild proved the importance of story in a video game. And by story, I mean all the ones that the players shared with each other about the incredible experiences they had actually playing the game. No script can ever beat that, in my opinion. So I was thinking about story and all that, and I'm just like, for like 2 months on the Juice Loose podcast, we talked about our experiences with playing Zelda. Like those are some of the best stories that I've in memory for me. Like, how amazing is it that I went west and northwest in Zelda first. Somebody went southeast, like we have two completely different stories to share come, Monday on the podcast. And it's like, that to me is better than, and will be more memorable and more impactful to me as a person than some writer who threw together, or not threw together, but put together like this really great story of father and son in God of War, going off what everyone's saying. Well, when I'm playing the game again years from now, I mean, is that story, it might still be good because movies are good on repeat viewings, but some of my best memories of video games are sharing my gameplay experiences with other people, talking about the first time I saw Super Mario 64. There's no story in that game really, but the stories are from us players telling each other our memories of gaming. Like, to me, that's the only thing that matters about story in video games, is sharing stories with other gamers, other people, and having that. And like in the real world, talking to somebody about an experience, like guy at work was, he's PC guy, but he's playing PUBG and Overwatch, and he told me some really cool stories from a game that has no story. Like, that's to me is where story and video games go hand in hand, and where it's important. Because if you're not, if you're unfortunate, you don't have anybody telling people, to talk about with gaming, that's what YouTube's for. That's what these comments, these live chats and stuff are for us gamers to come along. And it's like, like, maybe if you don't have anybody to talk gaming with, then, I'm sorry, that's unfortunate. But to me, that's honestly the only thing that's important when it comes to story in video games in the same sentence, is sharing stories of the actual game and playing the game. And The Last of Us, that was my number 2 game of 2013, and I really enjoyed it, and I thought the story was good. The ending I didn't like, but I'm not like that hasn't stuck with me as much as the first time I took on the clickers. And there's a section towards the end, I think it was either right before or right after you see the giraffes in that cutscene. There's like a underpass under like a highway, and there's just all the things you've learned in that game. There's all these enemies all thrown together, and actually having to get through that. And the first 2 tries, it was a miserable failure. But on the 3rd try, I just found my way, and I was just sneaking around. I'm taking things out, and it was a beautiful moment in that game, and it was all gameplay. And it was like, yeah, they set that up with the design of that area, and that led to me telling the guy I worked with who played the game, and we actually split the price of the game so we could both play it, just because neither of us were sure if we wanted it. And we're sharing our stories of different moments in the game. We weren't talking about the story. Now there are games, just like movies, just like books, where the actual story could affect you and touch you and all that. So, you know, Life is Strange, I haven't played it, Grimpachi, but I hear it was great. You know, if it's a really amazing story. I really don't bother playing story based games. I know that there's great stories to be experienced, but if I got a controller in my hand, I want to be doing something. So, uh, that's kind of why I've never really been interested in that type of game. Like I'll watch a great movie. If I want to watch a movie, why do I have a controller in my hand? For some of these games, that's how I've always felt. I've tried some of them, and it's like uh, I just, you know, I don't know why, because it's a game and I have a controller in my hand. Like I just can't do it. I don't know. Maybe I should. Maybe I'll try it again. I don't know. But it's just never really been my thing with those story-based games. The Telltale games, I don't understand at all why people play those. It's just, sorry, I was reading a comment. Those Telltale games, it's like, what is it like? Those books where if you want to see this happen, go to this page. If you want to see if you take this choice, go to this page, and it kind of took you in a different. The story changed depending on the decision you made, and it's like I'd rather just be kicked back in my theater room watching a movie at that point. So, all right, the next thing I want to talk about, and this applies to Nintendo games just as much as Sony games. Microsoft, Xbox don't have to worry about this as much, and that's the overuse of 10 out of 10 with reviews. And I'm just going to set this up real quick. Last year, there was one game that was a 10 out of 10 for me, and that's Breath of the Wild. Super Mario Odyssey wasn't a 10 out of 10. Xenoblade Chronicles 2 wasn't a 10 out of 10. Rise of the Tomb Raider a couple years ago was real close, but not a 10 out of 10. So I'm a little more stingy, but I just want to talk about what happens when they start throwing out 10 out of 10 for just about every major release. And again, it's happened for Nintendo, like Zelda, Twilight Princess getting a 10 out of 10, Skyward Sword getting a 10 out of 10, and then Breath of the Wild gets a 10 out of 10. You gotta stick with the generation it came out in, because of the GameCube era and the Wii era, Twilight Princess, you can't just, it's tricky. There's a lot of gray area and nuance, like Ms. T likes to say. That might have been a 10 out of 10 for that generation, but now it isn't. So there is some nuance here, but the point is, and I made this when The Last of Us Remastered came out, and IGN let Colin Sony Dick Riding Moriarty give it a 10 out of 10. The Last of Us Remastered. So he's judging it as a PS4 game, giving it the same score as a PS3 game, because he's a freaking one of the worst fanboys of any console that I've ever seen. And I said, so you're giving a PS3 game up-resed, and it was at 60. I don't know how locked it was, but it got a frame rate boost and a resolution boost. Same game. It controlled better on the PS4, but I'm thinking, so what's a built from the ground up Naughty Dog game, like Uncharted or the next Last of Us? So are you going to say they're both 10s and they're equal? Like, if you give everything a 10, then it's like, if everybody was Superman, nobody would be Superman. Basically, if everybody had the same abilities as Superman, then it'd just be normal. That would just be the way of life, and there'd be nothing that stands out. If you give everything a 10, then what the next game comes out is, let's say it's a game changer like Breath of the Wild. Now they both have 10s, so it's not a major problem for a lot of places. I mean, there's a lot of reviewers that are a little more stingy, but when you start just throwing them out there left and right, like I said, Super Mario Odyssey to me wasn't a 10 out of 10, but it got a lot of 10 out of 10s. So you're saying that there's no room for for to go up for the next 3D Mario game. Like, and it's like I said, it's a tricky thing to talk about because Super Mario 64 for the era it came out in definitely was a 10 out of 10. Now, do the game controls and mechanics, now they're still really playable, but are they as polished as Super Mario Odyssey, for example? No. But the impact of Super Mario 64 for that time period and that generation, so you can't compare Mario 64 getting a 10 and Super Mario Odyssey getting a 10 and say, well, Odyssey's so much better. Well, not for the time when it came out. You got to look at that too. So I mean, there's lots of little things, little ways to look at this, but I just feel like if you give every game that comes out a 10, it kind of deflates the actual score of it getting a 10. Like Edge magazine, aren't they only up to like, God, I forget how many. Breath of the Wild was like under 20th, the game that got a 10 out of 10, and it should be a landmark thing for people, I think. Maybe, and it's every reviewer, every person's going to be different. And I don't think 10 means perfect in every way, no flaws. You could say the impact the game has is a big part of it too, but it just kind of deflates getting a 10 out of 10. Like if you gave Uncharted 4 a 10 out of 10, which I think is absolutely ridiculous, it's an 8 out of 10 at its best, maybe 8.5 in its best moments, probably a 7, 6.5 in its worst moments. But say someone gave it a 10 out of 10, and then Horizon Zero Dawn come out, gets a 10 out of 10. Now God of War comes out, gets a 10 out of 10. Spider-Man comes out, gets a 10 out of 10. And you could just say like this is kind of just, and I'm not talking fanboy, I'm talking like review sites. Like, doesn't that if everything's getting a 10, like, I don't know, it just feels kind of like what's do we need an 11 now because everything's getting a 10? It's like I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. It feels like it's not a big deal anymore. Yeah, so that's, what do you guys think? There's Call of Duty games that almost got 10s, like 9.5s and shit, and it's like really? Like, I mean, and I know there's all the whole clickbait thing, give a game a high review and you're probably gonna people watch your video, give it a low review, and you're gonna get a bunch of people watch the video because they're mad. Like Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze, perfect example, probably the biggest clickbait score I've ever seen. Skyward Sword, I think, got a 7.5 from the same site. Now, that was bullshit because he said his controls didn't work, and everybody else I know, like, you either like them or you don't like them, but they work. Like, he must have had a faulty Wii remote or something. So, but I don't know. It just seems to me like it's getting a little too much with the 10 out of 10s, and I think it should be. And maybe God of War is that defining game for the PlayStation generation. And if it is that big of a defining game, it should be pretty much the only game that has a 10 out of 10. Like, especially having played Uncharted and Horizon Zero Dawn, and just knowing how much of a joke it is that those games got 10s from anybody when they're major gameplay flaws. There's major design flaws. Like, that's, to me, that's just kind of a thought I had as I was creating this podcast, or creating the live event. I keep calling it a podcast. I don't know. Maybe it technically is, but I don't know. Would you rather have, I'll just ask this question. Would you rather have 10 be a little more special than just getting handed out a lot and frequently now? Do you think it's a little early for anyone who's been playing God of War? I mean, sure, you're not far enough into it to know. Breath of the Wild, best game for me. It's the best game ever created. Does it have some flaws? Yes, but best game ever created. I think that deserves a 10. The things that it does right, it does so much better than any other game, that the minor flaws, like the fact you can't swim underwater and stuff like that, that's not a flaw when when I'm swimming on top of the water and it just looks like the fact that the grass goes into the water and there's details and stuff in there, and then there's ducks, on the water. There's little details like that. Like I hate to have things that are missing be negatives when you're talking about a game that has so much to offer. So anyway, that was just got a little off. Anytime I bring Zelda Breath of the Wild, I could just go on and on, but I'm just saying for me, like that, or in the Blind Forest was real close to a 10 out of 10 for me. Um, Unfortunately, I played that a year after it came out, so it couldn't be on my top game of the year list. But there's a few games every generation or so for me. Metroid Prime on the GameCube, 10 out of 10, even though I never want to go back and play the GameCube version ever again because I played with the Wii remote aiming on the Metroid Prime trilogy on the Wii U. So now is that the original game, like that was a 10 out of 10, now unplayable. It's like they improved it in the collection, and now it kind of lessens the GameCube playing experience. So um, that's a good question. How do you pronounce your name? Kaeski? What's better, Breath of the Wild or Link to the Past? I mean, Link to the Past is my number 2 game of all time, and Breath of the Wild is my number 1 now, but they're really close. And Link to the Past was the pinnacle of the series, the music, the world they created, the dark world, the challenge. I mean, I went back and played that when it came out on the Wii U Virtual Console, and I'm like, what the fuck do I do? Like, I could not find something that was just hidden randomly in the water and like the Zora Falls that I needed. I forget some kind of power that opened in the Death Mountain in the Dark World. I'm trying to think what the hell you got there. And it's just hidden. Like there's no way I was gonna find it. I had to look it up. But great game, great experience. One of the first games I ever bought with my own money, if not the first game, and it was the best game I ever played until Breath of the Wild came out. So yeah, that's a good point, Mohammed. The user scores on Metacritic or any of those sites, it's absolute bullshit. The fanboys, it's one of the saddest things in the gaming community, in my opinion, are the fanboys giving tens to increase a game score, whether it deserves it or not, and the haters giving games zeros. Like you guys, if you've been following me, I'm not a fan of Sony. Like I think the PlayStation 1 was so overrated. I just never liked the controller. I never liked the super long loading times. I could never get into a lot of those games. I wasn't wowed by them. PlayStation 2 had some good games. Didn't like the system. PlayStation 3, the worst video game system I've ever owned. It's the worst of the main like consoles ever to be released, that in my opinion. Now you got weird like Panasonic 3DOs and Atari Jaguars, like those were terrible and those were worse. But as far as like mainstream successful consoles, I have no love for the PS3. I still have it. You can see it right there. It's the worst console I've ever owned. It's the worst gaming console. But I keep it around. It's backwards compatible version, but I have one PS2 game, Shadow of the Colossus, and then I have The Last of Us, which I went back and kind of played. But I owned a Sega console. I had the Sega Dreamcast. Don't have it anymore, but I had it and had about 30 games. So no, Grimpachi, that's completely two different things. The PS1 controller and the Super NES controller. I just never liked the shape. I mean, they didn't evolve it at all. It was more ergonomic than the Super NES controller, and then they stayed the same controller for 3 freaking console generations. But anyway, I'm just trying to highlight how much dislike I have for Sony and the PlayStation brand. And I give Uncharted 4 an 8 out of 10. I give Horizon Zero Dawn, I don't know, 7.5 to 8. You're not going to find somebody who dislikes Sony more than me, other than somebody who doesn't have one. Like I'm right up there with, some of the biggest Sony haters, like Zobi70. He's a big Sony guy, but he's one of my favorite YouTubers. He's just a troll and he's doing it for humor. But um, so I don't like Sony, but I can still give games a fair review, like once I play them. So like I said, the user scores on Metacritic are the biggest joke. Like it should remove every 0 or 1, whatever. Like I don't think there's hardly any game out there today that's a 1 out of 10. So I feel sorry for people who go to Metacritic. I honestly haven't been to Metacritic other than we talked about reviews one time in a podcast in the last 2 years. That's the only time I've been on Metacritic. Well, no, somebody was talking about Xenoblade Chronicles 2, and it had an 80 Metacritic, and I'm like, yeah, that's interesting. I wonder what the other games, and other games all have 80. Like X had an 80. The original game, I forget where it was. I went there, in the last year for that reason. I've bought so many games without having, even looked at Metacritic. I haven't looked at Rotten Tomatoes since Batman versus Superman reviews. I've seen tons of movies and I'm just really enjoying them. And Grimpachi can't. I know you said for you, Horizon Zero Dawn is the best combat in a game, except when you're taking on human AI, then it's the worst combat. Then it's just the most overpowered melee combat system. But it's exhilarating. Horizon. There's a lot of weapons that don't really have a use. Like they're cool in concept, but in execution, just put elemental arrows on, and the thing that you shoot a rope into them and then you pin it to the ground. Like those two things all I ever needed. But the combat can be exhilarating, except for when you're constantly running towards the camera and dodge rolling. I don't like games that just have a ton of dodge rolling. So for me, it's Breath of the Wild's combat I thought was way more diverse, fun. There's so many more tools I could use in Zelda that I could mix it up. I mean, there's so many just random things you can bring to the table in Zelda's combat. Now, if you just played it straightforward and I'm just gonna parry and flurry rush and to win every time, then yeah, I guess for some people. But if you really test, what's in the game, what the game has to offer, you can really, find some fun there. Let's see. One fault I have with Horizon Zero Dawn combat are the traps. Those are far too inefficient to use. Yeah, like I was saying, there's multiple weapons types in Horizon that are just not effective. But there was times in Horizon where I was just like totally tense, just into that battle. It was I don't know what anything's called. It was really intense. I was trying to use all my tools and like got down to almost no health, and it was either kill it or I was gonna die and have to start over type moments. There was quite a few of those. Had a lot of fun, but it's just I'm gonna dodge roll. I'm gonna dodge roll. Like it's just too much of that. Like Dark Souls or Demon Souls, the game I played. What I'm seeing from Bloodborne and the other Dark Souls games, what I'm seeing from God of War is like, I don't know why just the whole dodge roll thing just feels like a cheap mechanic to get out of, situations. That's why I didn't like the original God of War series that much, is that stupid dodge roll mechanic. Then Platinum Games comes up with a brilliant idea, like you're going to dodge roll, but then the reward is you're going to have witch time, which now you can do different combos, and now you're waiting for them to attack so you can dodge. And you're talking about a fine line between just ridiculous dodge rolling because you can spam it, and now I'm waiting for enemies to attack so I can get into witch time so I can even do more damage. Just a small little change right there, infinitely improve combat in that type of game. So, but you know, it's to each their own. If you love that, like Grimpachi, if you think that's the best combat you've ever played, I think Rise of the Tomb Raider's combat is better than that. You know, doesn't have, you're not facing the same type of enemy, like, but as far as the controls, you got the shooting and everything. I'd rather have the switch into a rifle with a scope, then to a bow, then to a shotgun, than the tool sets and the weapon sets of Horizon. But that's just me. But anyway, hopefully this was entertaining. Feel free to comment on the whole game, Too Many Games getting 10 out of 10. And as far as what's important to you for a game, and you know, from a design standpoint to what you actually end up playing, you know, what's important. Because I know there's at least one person going to watch this video and story is going to be number one on their list. I have a feeling K-Bomb 20 from the Live and Level podcast, that's his number one. He wants a great story. So, you know, you can't argue opinions. I can just say, I completely disagree with that. Do your thing. I'm going to do mine. And, you know, I have a controller in my hand, so I want to be using it. So that's why, you know, basically the gameplay, the mechanics, just to reiterate, the mechanics of the game, the controls, the level design, the music, the art direction, character design, those are my important things. And then story and everything else is, you know, and Grimpachi, number one is enjoyment. Well, if the mechanics are bad, you're going to have trouble having fun with a game if the game mechanics are boring, or if your character's move sets are just basic and limited. Like, you got to have, you know, there's got to be, you know, something fun for you to do, and that to me is part of the mechanics. And then the controls and the level design is also making it fun. Retro Death, I think I had an hour-long juice opinions. I don't know where we're at with this one, but maybe it's over an hour. I don't know. There's a lot to talk about. And those NES games wasn't about story. Yeah, no. I mean, there were some. Final Fantasy 1 and 2, I think, had story. And Dragon Quest games had story. So, yeah, 10 hours in. So, yeah, I'm going to wrap this up. I didn't realize I'd gone this long. So, appreciate everybody for tuning in and giving your feedback. And, yeah, we'll probably be back next week for another Juice Opinions. And on Mondays, Juice is Loose. We'll potentially have some Labo hands-on impressions from some people. I think Robert's getting God of War, so hopefully he'll get a chance to play that and not be chasing the females around, and we can get his impressions of God of War. And yeah, so that's going to be it for this one. Again, thanks for tuning in, and really appreciate everybody for commenting and stuff. So we'll